Have you ever wondered how one cruel decision can destroy a family and one unexpected reunion can heal it forever? Stay until the end, because this story will remind you why love is always stronger than pride. Billionaire businessman Daniel Carter believed money could solve every problem. During the grand opening of his luxury hotel, he noticed an elderly dishwasher quietly cleaning plates in the kitchen. Embarrassed that such an old man worked during such an important event, Daniel angrily fired him in front of everyone, calling him useless and too old to belong in a five-star hotel. The old man lowered his head, smiled sadly, and quietly walked away without saying a word. Watching from a distance was Daniel's 8-year-old daughter, Emma, who secretly followed the old man outside and handed him her favorite teddy bear, whispering, "Grandpa, you look lonely." The old man smiled with tears in his eyes and replied, "Kindness is the greatest gift a child can give." Months later, Daniel's business empire suddenly collapsed after a trusted partner betrayed him, leaving him bankrupt overnight. Friends disappeared, investors turned away, and even relatives refused to answer his calls. With nowhere else to go, Daniel moved into a tiny apartment with Emma, struggling to afford food. One rainy evening, Emma became seriously ill, but Daniel couldn't pay for her treatment. As he sat outside the hospital in despair, an expensive black car stopped beside him. A familiar elderly man stepped out wearing an elegant suit. It was the same dishwasher. Shocked, Daniel discovered the old man had never been poor. He was the retired founder of one of the country's largest hotel chains, who had spent his retirement secretly working ordinary jobs to understand how employees were treated. He had chosen Daniel's hotel as his final test, and Daniel had failed it. Seeing Daniel's broken heart and Emma's condition, the old man smiled gently and said, "A person's worst mistake should never become their final chapter." He paid for Emma's treatment, helped Daniel rebuild his confidence, and later offered him a second chance, not as a billionaire, but as a hotel manager who first had to learn to respect every employee, from the janitor to the chef. Over the following years, Daniel transformed into a completely different man. Every new employee received the same respect, every cleaner was thanked personally, and every customer was treated with genuine kindness. At the reopening of his hotel, Daniel stood before hundreds of guests, invited the elderly man onto the stage, and with tears in his eyes said, "The greatest investment I ever received wasn't money. It was forgiveness." The audience rose for a standing ovation as Emma ran onto the stage, hugged the old man tightly, and proudly called him Grandpa. In that unforgettable moment, everyone realized that true wealth isn't measured by the size of your bank account, but by the size of your heart, because kindness always returns when the world least expects it, and the people we respect today may become the ones who save us tomorrow. Daniel accepted the old man's offer with tears in his eyes, but the journey back to success was nothing like before. Instead of sitting in a luxurious office, he spent his first 6 months working beside receptionists, waiters, cleaners, cooks, and security guards, learning every job inside the hotel. For the first time in his life, he realized how invisible these people often felt, despite being the reason every guest left with a smile. Every evening, the old man quietly observed him without saying much, waiting to see whether Daniel's kindness was real or simply temporary. One afternoon, a wealthy businessman insulted an elderly housekeeper for accidentally spilling coffee on his expensive shoes. Before anyone could react, Daniel walked over, apologized to the guest for the inconvenience, but then calmly stood beside the frightened housekeeper and said, "In this hotel, every employee deserves the same respect as every customer." The businessman became angry and threatened to leave, but Daniel refused to sacrifice dignity for profit. The old man, watching from the balcony, smiled proudly because he finally knew Daniel had truly changed. Months later, the hotel reopened under a completely new philosophy. Every employee's name was displayed with pride, Every cleaner attended monthly appreciation dinners, and scholarships were created for the children of low-income staff members. During the grand reopening ceremony, Daniel invited the elderly man onto the stage in front of hundreds of guests and reporters. Fighting back tears, he handed him the golden scissors and said, "Years ago, I thought success was measured by luxury. Today, I know success begins with respect. You didn't just save my daughter. You saved the man I was becoming." The audience rose to their feet as Emma ran onto the stage, hugged the old man tightly, and proudly introduced him as her grandfather. Reporters captured the emotional moment, but the headline that appeared around the world the next morning wasn't about a billionaire rebuilding his fortune. It simply read, "The richest man in the room was the one who chose kindness." And from that day forward, every employee who joined the hotel heard the same story on their first day, not as a business lesson, but as a reminder that titles earn authority, money earns comfort, but only kindness earns a legacy that lives forever. A year later, the hotel had become one of the most respected in the country, not because it offered the most luxurious rooms, but because every guest could feel the warmth of the people who worked there. Employees who had once feared losing their jobs now smiled with pride, knowing they were valued like family. One quiet evening, Daniel found the elderly man sitting alone in the hotel garden, gently watering the same white roses Emma had planted months earlier. Daniel sat beside him and asked softly, "Why did you give me a second chance after everything I did to you?" The old man smiled, looking toward the sunset, and replied, "Because many years ago, someone gave me one when I didn't deserve it either." He then revealed a story Daniel had never heard before. As a young man, he had once been arrogant, obsessed with success, and blind to the struggles of ordinary people. It wasn't until he lost everything in a financial collapse that a poor hotel cleaner gave him food, a place to sleep, and enough hope to start over. That single act of kindness changed his entire life. From that day forward, he promised himself he would spend the rest of his life searching for people who deserved a second chance, just as he once had. Daniel's eyes filled with tears as he realized that kindness had been passed from one stranger to another, across generations, like a light that never went out. The following week, Daniel announced a new tradition. Every year, on the anniversary of the hotel's reopening, every executive would spend an entire day working alongside cleaners, cooks, waiters, and maintenance staff, not as a publicity event, but as a reminder that no job was beneath anyone. News of the tradition spread around the world, inspiring companies in different countries to adopt the same idea. Journalists called it the kindness standard, but Daniel always corrected them with a smile, saying, "It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to one old man who taught me that the strongest leaders are the first to serve." As Emma watched her father hug the elderly man once again, she smiled and whispered, "Some families are born and some are created by kindness." At that moment, everyone understood that the hotel had become far more than a business. It had become a home where every person, regardless of their title or background, was treated with dignity, respect, and love. Red Heart, vidIQ. 5 years later, Daniel's hotel had become more than a successful business. It had become a symbol of compassion. Visitors from around the world came not only for luxury, but to experience the unique culture of kindness that filled every hallway. One winter morning, a young hotel manager rushed into Daniel's office and informed him that an elderly homeless man had been sleeping near the hotel's entrance. Some guests had already complained and demanded that security remove him immediately. Without hesitation, Daniel walked outside himself. As he looked into the old man's tired eyes, memories of the day he had cruelly dismissed the elderly dishwasher came flooding back. Instead of asking security to send the man away, Daniel invited him inside, served him a hot meal, and personally sat beside him while they talked. The guests watched in complete silence. One little boy asked his father, "Why is the owner eating with a homeless man?" His father smiled and replied, "Because a great leader never forgets where kindness begins." The next day, Daniel announced a new program called Second Chance, offering jobs, training, temporary housing, and counseling to people who had lost everything. Within a year, hundreds of homeless men and women had rebuilt their lives through the program. During its first anniversary, the elderly man Daniel had helped stood on stage wearing a clean suit and proudly shared how one simple act of compassion had restored his dignity. Fighting back tears, he looked toward Daniel and said, "You gave me a job, but more importantly, you gave me back my name." The audience rose in a standing ovation, while the elderly mentor quietly watched from the front row with a proud smile. Emma gently held his hand and whispered, "Grandpa, this is exactly what you taught us." The old man nodded and softly replied, "Kindness is the only investment that grows richer every time you give it away." In that moment, Daniel realized that success was no longer measured by the number of hotels he owned, but by the number of lives that had been changed because one man had chosen forgiveness instead of revenge.